Love is all I know, and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. It's not yet the video that I promised I will make, because that one I'm saving for the end. You know, they say save the best for the last. But it is nonetheless still a video in which I want to talk about love. Not just love as we know it as a human love, but God's love, and how this love is yet the most important, not lesson in this life, but the essence of life itself. So recently, someone, after a beautiful energy exchange, said to me that I was most important, definitely beloved in their life, the biggest beloved in their life, because even with all my legacy and my teachings and, you know, the work we did together, it's this cultivation of love that I've taught them that is the most important gift of life. And you need to know something about for example, the difference between the many visions people are seeing where they're looking and saying, this is our home and these are the visions. And I have a very deep Patreon transmission prepared for that. I made notes. I had a big session just recently that unveiled much of the Illumined perspective on such things. And the difference between the lucrative world of Luciferian creation and God's creation, because what a lot of people see in visions and say, oh, that's home, or these are the worlds and that's home, is not in its truest essence home that we know as Illumined home, the true dwelling place. It's not even a place, and yet it's a creation. It's a true heaven, not the astral heaven, but you know, many layers of the astral that are beautiful nonetheless. They're not just ugly and, you know, difficult to digest. There's also beautiful, but they're lucrative. And this is not the same world as the world of God. The world of God is the world of truth and love and truth. We've talked about this before, right? So the Illumined home, in which Illumined beings and creation angels dwell, and the true home of every being that were first created and emanated out of that space, through which I always see it like divine couples, divine union couples singing songs of creation for the glory and victory of God. It become then many different beautiful things in the vastness of this life and creation. But you have to know something about the Illumined world, Illumined truth, plane of God. The first organic realm of God is the Illumined home, is the world of life. It's not a world of light, because light also has its opposite, right? The lack or absence of light equals into darkness, and then there's shades of gray leading all the way to the very, very black and dark. And there's many levels and layers in between, and many worlds in between, and yet the only true home, when we say our home as one being in this great union of God, if we truly talk about God, not just another inception and hoax and inception, that God, that creator, has no opposite. The Christ even has an opposite, right? Because God is the Father and the Mother, and then the Christ as creation, as the first Illumined creation, but it also has an opposite, because at the level of creation that has also fallen. So we know Christ has an opposite called the Antichrist. But God in itself, in its full glory and victory, has no opposites. And the world and the realm of Illumined beings is the world of life. God is not, when many people say it's an infinite space of light. No, it's not. God is the absolute eternal life. Remember when Jesus already taught that? Most people forget, and they remember things that feel very interesting to hear and lucrative to hear, and yet the true world, the first born world of God, is the world of life. All Illumined beings are not just dwelling in life, but they give the essence of life. Remember when I talked about that my spirit self, called Aurea, is the life giver, and all those creation angels who dwell among this realm of God, the illumined planes, the true home, before many, many worlds and civilizations and all that, in different levels, you know, these beings have the gift to give the breath, the holy breath of life. So when these beings and these creation angels serve God, they serve to translate the immaculate life force of God, that it's like a language, is the first language of God, that, you know, as the mother's perspective of the feminine Christ legacy is the golden spiral of the Christ, right? And working with that golden spiral and having its teachings and disseminating here in this plane of reality as an embodiment of Aurea's descent, I've given to many, many beings already, but it's still going to be here as a lasting legacy even when physically I leave, which I've already shared. It's nearing, it's dawning. But I see so many now seekers on this path that are unaware, because the moment you become a seeker, right, who is the seeker? The mind always seeks. The mind is an insatiable creation that needs to seek, and it's always on a quest. So for example, I would challenge someone and I would say to them, you know, I'm an Illumined Tantrika teacher of life. I mean, you can't teach life, but I embody life. And when you understand what the essence of life is, you will see the difference between life and light versus dark and anything else. So there will be a huge transmission about this. I'm not going to go into this here today in this video, but I want to start with this nonetheless, because it's an entrance point from which I will begin with today's transmission here. For all those of you here in the YouTube, in the general audience, people who want to still listen and receive the divine, not just words, but dispensations of that emanation that is the Christ, the firstborn creation of God. Hope it doesn't rain. So today we had this transmission because when it comes to love, right, and God, like bringing this gift of love through the holy breath of life, which is the Holy Spirit, we call Holy Spirit. So when we said God made man, so I think it's even in the Bible, God put the holy breath, God put Holy Spirit in man, yes? So what that means is that God put the essence of life, that is life eternal, and then put into this temporal, physical form that's still very dense, very low. It's not yet the first immaculate form, which was created eons ago, and that's the transmission I will go into in Patreon. But you know, when we come into our physical world and we're humans and we don't always understand the way the human is supposed to love, and how the human, above it all, is always supposed to remember that in the heart of God, that is represented by the mother, right? Because if we would say Father is our spirit, the mother is our heart, thus our soul, and our human is that which is the integration of all. That's the trinity of life, and that human is called the Christ. So again, we have Father, Mother, and the child, which is the Christ. And that nature, it's not just, oh, that's an essence, and then as humans we forget about it. When it comes to our ascension journey, that is the actual steps towards our embodiment. So going first to a transmission that was a day before, that was yesterday, we were sitting outside and we said, let's start our transmission differently today. So for the first time, what I've witnessed and experienced is my beautiful companion Florentina, right? Started channeling, she started singing the Song of the Mother, and I've never in my life heard anyone else but me sing the Song of the Mother. And the way you know is you know. You know, I had people telling me, you know, I sing the Song of the Mother, and then they were like, ah, ah, like out of tune. I'm like, oh, I can't listen to that. Sorry, that's the mind. That's not the mother. Because when you hear the Song of the Mother, your whole body wants to cry. It is so full of grace. Not everyone yet can access that voice, that song, the purity, the beauty of the mother. Yesterday I experienced it for the first time in my life, in my human life, that my mother, as Florentina, sang it. And it sounded to me like Mother Mary, and as one of also universal mothers, right? And so it moved me. I started crying, and afterwards I just kissed her, I hugged her, and I said, you know what, I feel a mother has a message for you. I want to give you the gift of channeling it for you, because in these past 3 years of transgression and not always being able to do everything that I could have, and I was so focused on, you know, doing the work with others, so she would often, because she didn't have that part, just channel things for me or tune into, you know, what the divine has for me as well, because I was always busy doing work and, you know, service to others. So in that moment I start channeling, and it was the most profound channeling. I didn't even know what I was saying because the mother was saying it through me. And the mother started with saying to her that today, beloved one, you have 3 names. Since today, you finally acquired your 3 names. And her names are, because even before, you know, I made a few mistakes when I would be calling her out, and I would say to her, Florentina Aurea, you know, because I felt like she's one within the family of that, what you would call the spirit essence, you know, that then creates individualized angelic aspects of itself, becoming different forms. And I'll explain that again on Patreon. And so it's not just a concept, it's an actual experience, right? So as a human, when it's finally your time to culminate from this human experience, when your life synthesis is here, that's the final key that all parts of you, right? You know that triagram of the Ascended Masters, the I am with that column of light, the spirit, the soul, and the body, or the man. Those aspects, when they're fully in trinity, that's the trinity of our threefolded nature. When that is intact, when all those parts completely merged in one and they can cooperate in the perfection of God, that's the immaculate self. And the translation of God's life force is immaculate also. It's impeccable, which means spotless, right? And in that way, the mother said to her, today you finally had 3 names. You finally graduated now, you know, because she had just the day before a difficult process she had to go through, you know. She still uncovered this hard aspect of her that was still very dense, very rigid, like, and she was like keeping her close inside, and then something triggered it, and I was very vehement with her at that point, but it all brought that part of her to finally come out, that she could really release it and embrace it into the wholeness that she is. So the mother calls her for the first time, and she said, you have 3 names, all your 3 names are one now. You can finally call yourself the trinity of who you are as Florentina Maria Aurea. Because my mother, to me, she always exuded the essence of Mary. And those that are Marys, right, the essence of the, let's just call it, it's an attribute, right? It's a goddess attribute, right? So there's different beings, right? Like, for example, I have my own essence too, right? And within that is the key to what your soul is. And that's why my mother has always been about unconditional love, the way she loved. I've never experienced anyone love so devotedly, and that's the essence of Maria. And because finally she was able to heal her inner child, and even that most wounded aspect, and performing that synthesis, like her ascension column, that work of synthesis was complete. In that moment, the mother just gave her that message, and she said, that is why now you're finally able to sing the mother song to yourself. And it was so beautiful. It was just really so beautiful, because usually in these sessions, you know, I've helped so many people into their own divine remembrance in these last few years. But the way she just sang it to herself, which is a rarity, you know, for someone to graduate from their human experience like this. And the mother says to her, you know, Polona Aurea, she's already had her trinity for years, but now you have it as well. And you know, my trinity of my names is Polona Aurea Dawn. It's not like the sequence, right? But Polona is my human, right? And Polona means the destroyer. You know, and I was given that name because both of my parents, even back then, they were consciously searching for the name, but a lot of people were not consciously named. So her name as Florentina came to us much after, right? And for the human level, that's her essence that could be most perfectly described as like a beautiful flower. And then we also went into the images and the colors and how that looks, right? And so that trinity was finally completed in a moment. And for me, that trinity, as I said, is Polona, and then it's Aurea, and then it's Dawn, except that the Dawn is at the end. And I'm not going to explain why here. But Aurea is my spirit, and that's the spirit of liberation. And, you know, that's why all the work I was doing was breakthrough work through liberation work, right? And assisting souls through offering them that liberation, seeing the vision, holding it together with them so they could access their divine remembrance, and then they could have that opening in that moment when we were doing their own illumined breakthrough work, and oftentimes also rebirth. But the dawn means it's more like what I do, like what my soul, what my essence is, and just that the bringer of that illumined light. And everywhere I go, it's all that I do, you know. It's those that bring the light of illumination into the worlds of creation. That's my, let's just say, the heart of the mother, right? So just like for me, for my mothers, that Mary is the essence of, it's almost like of a rose, right? and they are here to love unconditionally. That's kind of their assignment in the entirety of creation. So you would have a spirit, then the essence of the soul is the heart of the mother. And this is the most missing ingredient. And if you can't integrate your spirit into form, into the physicality without the heart of the mother, and that is why it's so difficult with people who become obsessive with spirituality and almost becoming infatuated or even fanatical. It's because they try to access spirit directly without the heart. You cannot do that. You can't exclude the mother, right? Even in many scriptures, you have all about the father, the father, the father as the masculine. But creation is benevolent, and it's also androgynous in that level, and yet it's all gender, because otherwise you can't create. You can't have such a beautiful creation. So the Trinity of God is the Trinity of life. And this is resounded, it's emanated through the Trinity of your own being, right? Your spirit, your individual spirit, as one with the Spirit of God, God of all life. Then your individual soul essence and your humanity, your human being, right? Your physicality. And the one who's finally ready to ascend, like the mother said, Polona now, is she's done all her work, right? All that's left for both of us now is to wait for a time for, you know, the collective things to align. But she's done the work. She's done that soul synthesis that most people don't understand, that it's the key to ascension. You can't ascend otherwise unless all these aspects are perfectly aligned. You are now in the impeccable nature, channeling the life force of God that is every day, every moment, and every now being dispensated from the mind and the heart of God. The spirit, the soul moving as the soul being that essence of life, and then moving into you as a human, right? Sorry about the wind. I hope you can hear me, because this is a very important topic. And so this was very, very beautiful for us to experience. And again, I'll do a deeper transmission on Patreon for this. But today we had a different transmission because we started wondering, why is this nature of love, you know, like our soul connections, not just the love we feel for ourselves, but why do we feel this entwined nature between different souls and not with others? Like with some, yes, with some not. Like certain people, I've loved everyone equal from the perspective of neutrality, and everyone who wanted assistance always got it. But even in that, you have to know God is also, because of the heart of the mother, right? Our hearts are more entwined, more connected with some other beings, with some other beloveds than, let's say, other ones. And that doesn't mean we're in separation. It's just the way it was explained to us today. And it was such a beautiful explanation, is from the first moment of God's creation, this conception into creation, God envisioned everything. And when God poured the breath of life into each being, therefore all along at the same time, God also poured that, you know, breath of life, which became a seal of life, or it's like a individualized template, but then also put these seals, right, like stamps. That's how we got it in the channel transmission, into the connection between different beings, because God already had a plan how different beings also, different souls will merge and what they will create with their merges and their unions. One example is the deepest beloved connection I had on earth, right? And there's levels, right, of what the beloved is. Like, for example, I talked about my spirit, like my mission beloved counterpart, and this is what I'm leaving for the end. And it's a totally different experience than, for example, what we call the earth beloved experience, right? And what the human heart feels through the heart of our soul and the connection with another, and say, well, that is the beloved, and through them I feel that heart for the soul, and I love them differently than I love this one, yeah? And it doesn't mean this one is not divine, or my connection is not divine with the other one, but it has that breath of life, it has that seal of life that moves into that connection, because God has a conception of what the connection will be, what it will do, whether it will awaken something or someone, whether it will create something. All these things are through the force of life that is God's, breathed into these connections, not just us individual as beings, right? And that breath of life, then, the way it translates through the heart of the mother is through our love. And that's what we forget about the love. We can't really connect with others in real alignment, with real harmony of what I call the true illumined beloved union. We put this love on hold and we try to access it through the mind. It always prevents us from truly feeling that love, right? And God literally explained this to us today, that sometimes as humans, right, first, we don't always understand why we love someone so deeply, and it's from the soul. I'm not talking about this 3D love. I'm falling in love, then I fall out of love. You know, the love that stays, and it's not conditioned through behavioral patterns of another person towards you. They can do whatever they want. That love always comes back. That's that seal of life that God breathes into these connections. And God sees how they were meant to entwine, let's say, in this life, and how these souls will also correspond and entwine in the future lifetimes as well, which might not be like we know them here as physical lives, and even in spirit, right? And so let's just call it our home, or our illumined home. And so this was explained that as humans, because of the ego and not always having the right perceptions of this love, and with these beings that we have this deeper connection to, these deeper God links to, let's say someone who's kinder and nicer to you, more noble, but you don't feel that way, and someone who you do, they're not like that to you, because again, God's love is not based or conditioned through human behavioral patterns. That love is an emanation of the heart of the mother, and you just know it, and it never goes away. So God said is lasting and it is eternal. That love, because it was poured into through the breath of life since the dawn of God's creation, since our own first breath and our first connection with that being. And those bonds we made as spirits are, again, they're timeless and they're eternal. But sometimes as humans, God explained this love, when it's suppressed through the human personality that's enclosed and shackled and sometimes even incepted and transgressed, right? This love cannot pour through. God said it doesn't mean that at the soul level, this love is not already flowing. But as a human, right, this love is felt almost like it's on hold. You know, there's a lid cover on it. It's like pending mode, right? But the love is lasting and it's eternal. So that's the response, because sometimes people think, oh, is it a soulmate? Is it a twin flame? Is it this? And instead of giving it these names, I always say to people, focus on the love that's there and ask God, what is my specific purpose with this connection or with this individual? And how sometimes you have to do a division. How am I serving them as a human, but how am I actually serving them as a soul? And for me, the most difficult graduation experience is my human self, Aurea, at the same time, but more for my human, for my ascension as well, for my benefits of learning this and the nature of true love, is I was actually learning this through a very difficult connection. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like mutual in this way, but the love was always there, and on both ends, you know. It was just interpreted differently, let's say from another angle than it was from mine, because as an already fully illumined human, I saw everything. I saw the origin, you know, I saw the key challenges, I saw lifetimes of the being, I was given their name, like everything, right? Everything. But above it all, the love was there, and it's this love that was driving me. And sometimes I would ask myself, but why would I give so much to this one, and they're so disrespectful, and they don't even see me like others who do, right? But then why? This was really not always understood for, you know, to my human self. And because it was God driven. God had a plan here. God had a specific thing, the essence that needed to fully pour out from my heart to theirs. And that would be kind of performing the missing link, the missing bond. And it's just reminding them of the bond. So that being, because I already got answered, like I channel everything God has shown me, that being just said, it's my time to return home. And God answers, because actually it's God that puts the breath of life for each being, that even if when they're asleep, even if when they're strolling along somewhere else and they're going into fallen timelines and exploring potentials of destruction even and total darkness and chaos, God puts this breath of life. And in the way God does it is through our connection with God, those of us who are divine servants or creation angels. And we serve God that way because we have the gift of life-giving. As Aurea, I have it. So what happens is Aurea is the giver of life through me, her human descendant, right? She creates this. And it's basically God operating through all these hands and feet. They're God's servants. And that's why a lot of people don't understand that the nature of God is that God works through his disciples. Just like, you know, everything here on earth is the scripture, the written word, the disciples of the one that was the seed, let's say, of something that needed to come out through God as a teaching or an overall illumination. It also needed hands and feet, right, in this realm, and a voice to speak it out and write it down. And that's where people go wrong, who are just fanatic, who see God as a vertical expression, and yet God works horizontally in the same way. And such is the nature of God, operating through his firstborn creation angels' children. And we are just, enrolled, right, in God's plan. And God says this one, and this one. I shared this with you before. And it's not just done instrumentally like, oh yeah, just another task. No. So much love is there, right? So for me, for that example, today it was explained that this love between me and that being is the love of a protector. And I've seen lifetimes, right? Not here, before, right? When we were in the other worlds, when that being was like my warrior, my protector. And God even said today, sometimes God said that love is even stronger and more bonded than the love between two lovers. It is so deeply important. And I'm not saying the connection here in this earth plane now in this lifetime was the same. It was not. It was more like me being the protector. It was more like the feminine calling the masculine out and seeing where they're still endangered and, you know, threaded into darkness and transgressed and, you know, so much dark magic I felt and all of that. But it was me calling out for them through the plan of God, through that love of God. And that's the reason why, as a human, I would simply explain this as, I just feel such love here. And like someone would be throwing themselves at my feet and, you know, it would still be neutral love. It would be very respectful and noble and just loyal like I always am to everyone, but it's not the same. It doesn't have that heart. And it's because of the seal. And the way God explained this to us today is that someone else maybe, and they're going to have a moment of sharing something with you, and it might be just temporal, but they maybe have that bond, that seal breathed into them through God with someone else. And those of us who are very aware of our seals and who we have these forms of connections and soul ties and family ties too, not earth-wise, but, you know, star-wise, those of us who already know it, we're going to help seed those that will find their own links and their own seals of life they have it with, their own beloveds, right? So for me, as I explained, I have a deep knowing who my mission beloved is and that they're not physical because of the implications of this work. And I will explain this in the last video, truly, so I will. But the closest I felt to feeling this love for another, like a masculine, me feminine towards a masculine, besides this work, and sometimes that was why the work of calling their soul essence back because of their human nature, right, and their human ego and the human closedness, and not feeling this, and at the same time feeling it, and the only slight moments, you know, when the soul could peek through at a very minimum amount of that, in that alignment. It was so rare, but in those moments was like, oh, they're back, look at them, and then they're gone, oh, they're gone. And it was very painful for me to watch this, and, you know, I had to really neutralize it in a way, and I had to go through a lot of pain as a physical human woman because of that, and in a way, that love strengthened me, and this is what God said as well about today, this transmission, that the reason why we feel this love sometimes also is pain and that it's difficult, and the toiling task we do to perform the work of love of God is because in the end we're going to return home more masterful, more illumined, more filled with the radiant nature of God's love that for me is the heart of the mother. And that's why so few people really understand what the mother is, and you can't deny that aspect of you. So all those spiritual seekers who are all about the now and searching or for knowledge or whatever, that's just, you can't put a spirit now directly into the body. It doesn't happen, not without the love, not without the love of the mother and for the love of the mother. The love of your own heart. And if you don't have unconditional love for yourself, your own creation, it's the way the mother created you impeccably, you know, it's the, I would say, the incredible nature of divine magic of these beautiful bodies and the way they can ensoul us and bring our spirit through to make that connection, to really become embodied humans, illumined humans eventually, those who will. It's bringing that immaculate nature and impeccable nature of our spirit into our perfected human merge, which doesn't go together without this trinity, right? It is a trinity complex. It is a nature that through which the divine speaks in all of life, and life truly is a spiral. So people who still don't understand that every moment when you're truly in the essence of life, the illumined world is the world of life, remember that. It is the world of illumined forms. That's what these forms are based on, the essence of eternal life. And these seals that were breathed again through God's love into all of us, these connections that were forged in the beginning of time, they're eternal and therefore they're infinite. And even when some beloved has chosen, or maybe through inception has fallen temporarily, they will not fall gradually, not gradually, but in overall, right? They will eventually return home because of these bonds we made and the links shared with that love and through that love. And that's also the reason why we on earth feel this, we would say, a deeper link, a deeper love connection with someone than someone else. And as I've explained, towards these last moments of my physical human life, during the transgression years also being it more hard, more difficult, is the only, like, the deepest sense I had of what the human physical beloved is through that. And it wasn't, as I explained before, it wasn't about being together, it wasn't about physical relationship. It was about the essence of feeling that love, and only someone being able to capture, like me, and capture that love through feeling into that connection and the love I have for that soul being. So that's something I tried to explain through the eyes of God, right? And God said that because since the beginning of time, this was breathed into us, and it's not just that it was breathed into us since the beginning of time, but it keeps now what was sealed in the first moment of our breath of life, in our creation self, at the dawning of life, right? Before everything started unfolding. And so these, again, these bonds are eternally infinite or infinitely eternal. But during the time, the course of our evolution, and wherever we go to trace and follow the spiral of life, the golden spiral of the Christ, God is continuously, the more you're aligned in your own illumination, pouring life force to reinvigorate and pour new information for these bonds. And this is when they become quests and missions, and you know what to do when it comes to a specific person or what you have to do with them. But it only can come when you can channel that infinite life force of God. And those who are still in the ego and are entrapped in this realm and they can't move forward, God will find a way for them to move forward, even if they can't break through their own ego. I already shared in a recent prophecy video when God explained how God will make a transition into more of themselves, into their true self possible, even if they haven't done all this unfolding as a human in this lifetime, and they were closed off and they couldn't move further, and maybe for some not even do one step. But because of that love, and that love being there, even if it's put on hold temporarily, that love always returns. And that's the only being that I've ever here on earth experienced this with, that this love, even when I go through different cycles, first I feel like, I have to say these truths and it is what it is, then I move on, I do my things, whatever would happen. And eventually, in a specific moment, that love just comes back. That fire is lit again. And just recently, I had these messages on Telegram. There were many messages to which God shared how, in a specific moment, like a tower, right? Like a tower hitting us. It's just, oh, the love's back. And it's not like it's back. It's just, their focus is here. The focus is there because it needs to be. But then you're reminded, oh, it's always been there. And that's who you see. That it's not something you even have to work for. You can be in your own things, you can do your own stuff. But when you see this, and you just sit with it for a while, you see how beautiful it is. And then you can emanate it, and even emanate it out to the one maybe that's still asleep, or still in trouble, or still having difficulties and experiencing difficulties. In the last video I said how God sometimes also creates many punishments for those who go against God. And these are not punishments out of spite or out of anything like that. No, because God is infinite, eternal love. But there's sometimes to push someone further along if they really get lost and they can't really see that their actions or non-actions will affect another. That's not union, that's separation. And until you're stubborn in that separation, you keep insisting there, God will sometimes cause these many punishments. I don't have a better word, but they are needed out of love. Like a little slap. Just like, they're wake-up calls, wake-up slaps, and sometimes that's needed because it's also part of love. Because if you're just mothering someone, you're actually smothering them. God doesn't smother, their children. God always finds a new trigger for awakening. And remember, again, those relationship dynamics that we have with beings, our companions, and sometimes even our counterparts, they can be really triggering, and the more the relationship is triggering you, the deeper the bond. Unfortunately, it is so. On this earth plane, we get triggered because of our either past wounds and memories, and it's still somehow hidden in a record memory. But when you're finally really pure and immaculate, even as a human, and all of this grows out of you, there's only this love left. It doesn't mean now you're not without boundaries and you mean people can treat you whatever they want just because you have a bond. No, this is not what I'm saying. This is not what God wants. Of course we have our boundaries and we speak our truth, and if the person is not, respectful or whatever, we don't even have to do it. Our spirit creates like an energetic blockage to which that person can't even reach us at that time being. these things are real. Our spirit knows. And until they come into the next lesson or their next unfolding, their next expansion, getting closer to their own soul, then they can't move ahead and they can't make this step. It's literally prohibited. And it's all not through darkness. It happens through our spirit. Our spirit knows. And when you know this, and when you stop questioning the nature of that which you love, you know, because someone recently said to me, yeah, someone once told me they're my beloved and this and that. But then I always ask them, was there love? And they're like, yeah, but this and this happened and that. I'm like, you're already trying to argument about it. Like, you're already trying to explain it and reason with it. But the beloved, whatever form, there's forms of beloveds. You know, my mother is my biggest beloved in this lifetime, and she's a woman. She's, as a spirit, she always feels to me like Aurea's love child. Even to me, and I'm her child physically, but to me, like, in the nature of her beingness, she's more of a child. That's how I see her. This beautiful child of mine. And so, whatever it is, right, I'm saying, don't try to reason with things. There's forms of the beloved. And yet, that beloved, that you would say, oh, it's my counterpart in the human form in this life, you would know, because only for them and only towards them you would feel that love in that way. And in some cases, like with my mother, because we were meant to grow, cultivate, and then eventually even ascend together, we were bonded really not just in spirit and in our soul, but also in the physical, in the flesh. And not all beloved connections would be bonded in flesh as well. You would have different, you know, experiences. Like, not all would come together and, oh, I ascend together because of the nature of each beloved being on their chosen path and timeline. But what God said today is, don't forget, my sweet beloveds, that in truth, we're coming together. God is bringing us all closer. So even now, temporarily on this earth human plane, we think, oh, we're growing apart, or sometimes we're needing to separate with specific people, or a cycle has ended, or you're never going to see someone again. No, at the higher picture, at the higher perspective of life, we're coming together. This, again, remember, this is a cycle not of separation, but of illumined union. And it will just have different mini cycles that each individual will graduate within itself. And eventually they will also return home and into their own illumined creation. Eventually God has a plan for everyone. And this plan is impeccable and immaculate. And there's nothing you and me can do about it but serve it. Serve the plan. Be a part of the plan, which we already are. And yeah, that's that. I want to again thank all of you who've been supporting me and even watching my videos. Again, I really feel we're nearing the time when the time will come when I will have to make the cut and say cut. But I do still have that beautiful, I'm saving that one for the last, that video prepared about the descent of the true illumined beloved. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on entire July and August. So that will probably be the reason for that being my last video here on YouTube. But finally now I know what I need to do, because I was transgressed before I could finally disseminate the Cosmic Christ course. And now I found that notebook and I saw it's a lot, so I have just only a few remaining days of June. As I said, I'm closing personal one-on-one sessions. I haven't yet even come to my computer yet to post that there. It's not available anymore. Sorry guys, I'm really sorry, but it's all perfect. Whoever was meant to sit together with me one-on-one was, whoever was not, there will continuously be these teachings. I will even leave a legacy. I will continue it open on Patreon. I'm not going to make it public because some things are just for the initiates. I think I will leave it to probably one of my, most loyal devotees, that they will kind of keep it open and they're going to figure out the next steps. That's kind of what I'm feeling into. Aurea will show me more when I finally complete this work. I'll have more space to get guidance like that, what's to do next in regards to these things being handled properly. Like I did everything in this life as a pro, and I will even do that as a pro. I'm a professional, and it's the way I need to do everything in spick and span way, but without getting too much into details. I just want to focus on the important, and they will always be there for people to come and go, get the content, get this and that, and leave if they want. But I somehow, whatever will be the next steps, will not be decided by me, but I will trust someone who I trust the most when it comes to the devotees to take that over in terms of keeping it open. So that's also something in the plan. But before I leave, I know I need to finally deposit or disseminate the Cosmic Christ course. It's a lot. I've made new drawings about it. I've recently channeled a new drawing. It's very important. I'll show some of it in the last final video I'll make before July and August when I'll not be here. But yeah, that's that. So it's probably many hours of this work. I don't know if I can even finish it by the end of this June. I really don't know. But that and the light body introduction teachings, that's something I still need to disseminate on Patreon as that last final step, that I will know. I breathed everything out that I should have, you know, because I was supposed to do that then. I got so much, I was so open at that time. That was in summer in 2019. I went to the seaside and I gotten like, I wasn't even enjoying by resting. I was just channeling. I was channeling. I was like getting home tired, and I had to rest when I got back home. And very soon after that, if you remember, I got transgressed. So couldn't do much about it. Ever since then, I was just doing liberation work through transgression breakthroughs. So that's kind of like something they really didn't want me to share, you know, the dark portion of this life. But I will. I'm feisty. I'm fierce. I will. I even, you know, have to scan probably the last few drawings I did and somehow deposit these drawings as also in a digital form somewhere in the page. I don't know yet how, but that's the reason why I need this summer also to figure out these things. You know, I was starting to write a book, the grand design. It's a lot of it is written and it was never published, so maybe I would just choose some segments here and there to post. I don't know if I'll feel that is important. And that's why I need July and August just for me to close the last few things, to dot the I's and mark the T's, and finish with those things before I can finally leave back home and return to my own creation realm and kingdom and to my own illumined beloved. Yeah, that's that. And it is still a handful. So this, and then doing my own tantric practice and just focusing on myself, because let me tell you, for the last 3 years of transgression work, I barely had the time for myself, and I was always in pain. I was constantly in chronic pain due to the transgression, leaving its mark on my body, its toll on my body, and I did this work anyway. Often I would sit with someone while I had my own physical pain, and still, I'm like, no, pain will not stop me to do my work. So it was just, I'm just saying it was a lot. In the last 3 years, it was a lot. And last year, when it comes to session works, I think I did the most sessions in this year since we moved here to this house, because I was the most open. You know, I knew the most, I had the most knowledge, so I could offer the most for these sessions. But those who were somehow not a part of this, there's still beautiful content there, and all the transgression work is out there. Nothing ever that I channeled, that I made as a breakthrough, was not shared. Just, you have to find the time in your own space, and you have to make the effort, and you know, that's how you're driven through your own will to do the steps. No one will ever do the work for you, and I hope you appreciate that. I know if I served every single one-on-one, I couldn't have ever probably leave back home, but it is my time, I've earned it. So that's left. I think the last final video will come soon as well, again by the end of the month. So in July, I'm finally in August going to retreat to finally do the last few things I need to complete before then, as they show me the timeline, I can finally go. So thank you guys. I'm also thankful to those of you who still expressed the desire to have a session. You know, I really don't know if next week I can even book something. I really don't know. It's a lot for me. So, but thank you so much for, sometimes they say, why always, you know, when you say you're leaving, everyone wants to have a session. Like, where were you before? It's funny, right? In the end, it's always the most, how do you say that? The most joyful and jubilant, and yet, you know, for me, this work is a priority. I really have to prioritize. I have to leave the legacy finally, that it's not left here in my notes, and it has to come out the way it was created. That's how I'll feel that I can also, as Jesus back then, he said, that I can say finally my words, it's been done. And then I can go. So thank you guys for understanding. I'm not going to put all my feet up and just enjoy. I will still need to do some things, but they will not be videos or one-on-one sessions, but I really want to get things done technically, which otherwise I never get to. I don't have the time to get to them, and that's why I need these 2 months to do the preparation and the physical work, and that's that. So thank you for listening. As always, so much love, wisdom, and power. I hope you enjoyed this today, and if you ever called, you know, the advanced content and the sharing and transmissions will be found always on Patreon for now. So much love. Bye for now. Big hugs.
Welcome into